is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news and intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversations. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the management and staff of Guardian Radio.
With early detection comes early prevention.
Put that in your pencil, make you feel like a champion.
Rise up again, let nothing keep you down. To live your best, hear the urologist speak. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Think you're losing grip of your manhood, don't give up on hope.
Don't be ashamed, it's time to take control. Get some help from the urologist.
And you will find
He'll help you solve your problems
on 96.9, yeah.
I telling you, with early detection
Comes early prevention.
Good evening, Bahamas. This is a live show after a 2-week little break. This is Dr. Greggory Pinto, Bahamian urologist, and I'm joined by my co-host, Bahamian general surgeon and surgical oncologist, Dr. Wesley Francis. Good evening, Dr. Francis.
Good evening, Gregory, and good evening, Bahamas. Great to be back after a little hiatus.
We're here to speak about something that's very prevalent in the news, and it's very shocking, and it's causing a lot of despair in every sector of our society, and that's the health survey that revealed that 1 in 5 Bahamian students between the ages of 13 and 18 has attempted suicide. And that's overwhelming. I mean, the future of our nation are obviously our children. I've spoken many times about us losing this generation and the next generation, and every generation seems to be getting worse and worse on every category. But suicide, there's nothing worse than suicide. It's on the same level as murder. We as a society cannot allow our children to have such overwhelming hopelessness and despair and depression where they don't see a brighter tomorrow, and even if in that moment we as a society cannot recognize that someone is crying out for hope and for help. Many of these children mask it very well, particularly males. We speak many times about boys internalizing their fears and their anxieties and their depression and their childhood traumas. But we, if it's at the school level, whether it's at the clinic level, the doctor's offices, in within the church, within the family structure itself, in the home, we need to find a way to have an outlet for these children to speak openly about the pain that they're internally, it's almost like a volcano about to erupt. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Francis?
Well, mental health is a serious thing. It can go unnoticed because we know when somebody has a physical illness, but mental illness can be really masked. And depression is a serious issue. And a lot of times people, try to cope and deal with it. But, in a society where we're all so busy and doing our own thing, we fail to recognize sometimes when somebody's hurting. And so it's about, community. It's about reaching out to people who are ailing mentally and to have the awareness. Because I think we put a lot of energy, resources on physical well-being, but mental and social well-being is a part of that. And I think that is what leads to a lot of this despair, lack of hope, hopelessness, and then ultimately people feel so dejected that they want to take their lives.
I mean, the life of a child now compared to 40 years ago, you cannot even compare the stresses, the social anxiety, the peer pressure. We talk about social bullying going on Facebook. It's with technology, there's so many ways that persons can, from the anonymity of their room, cause havoc and cyberbully somebody to the point of suicide, whether it's a 10-year-old schoolmate or a 12-year-old church member. It's very difficult to police that.
I mean, it's a different universe, right? And people can get seriously isolated because you don't see the airwaves. You don't see social media like that, right? And so when people get isolated. And I mean, when you're alone and isolated, that's a risk of certain despair, and that's where people actually are at greatest risk. And so again, the whole social media is great. It has made the world smaller in a way, but it's also isolated a lot of people. Because you sit in your room and you're alone with that computer, that iPad, that iPhone, or whatever device it is, and you're there alone with your thoughts and all of this energy that's coming in from that. And so people get isolated, and isolated people tend to be the most vulnerable.
And then there's the academic stress. I mean, the stress put on children by their parents, by society, by their teachers, by the schools, in terms of being able to perform even at a very young age. It can have a terrible negative impact on a child's development and their psyche and their emotional well-being, their ability to have a good night's sleep. The amount of stress and the competitiveness, even for a 10-year-old trying to write exams, is overwhelming. I can't even imagine for someone who's going into the BGCSEs or in university in terms of trying to perform, and essentially they feel like their whole future rests on the success of one exam or two exams or a set of exams. And that exactly is not the case. We've done thousands of exams. Some have worked out well, some haven't, but we don't even think about it now. It's a cumulative effect of where we're going. Life is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So we need to know that children need to know that they don't need to define their happiness. They don't need to define themselves as a successful person based on grades or based on performance in sports, etc. So I think we need to prioritize happiness. A child needs to be well-rounded. A child needs to be well-developed. They need to have a strong sense of self. They have to have confidence. But to define someone just based on academics, and there are many persons who are very strong academically, but they have many weaknesses in other, such as emotionally, such as psychologically. So, in terms of peer interactions, they may be failing in that. So we need to create well-rounded individuals, and we need to have outlets for stress. We have to have outlets for anxiety, whether that's clubs in school. There are not enough children who want to participate in clubs after school. As soon as school is finishes, they want to go.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the clubs that we had back then, I mean, it occupied our time, but now there's so many distractions, right? And again, the whole social media craze that occupy people's times, occupy their attention. And then you have now these clubs competing for that attention, and that's no longer the cool thing. Yeah, I remember we were in Key Club back in Government High, and all the other clubs, because that was a form of social outlet for us, right? We socialized, we got to know our peers, we had that healthy interaction. But now, I mean, with a device in your hand, you're interacting with an entire world out there, but again, you're still isolated because it's not that human contact, and it's an environment where it's not always that healthy. It is not always that healthy. I think man is a social being, or human beings are social animals, and we need to interact with each other, and we need healthy outlets. As far as the academics is concerned, I mean, everybody, we just need to set goals, right? And understand that, foster in our kids to try to do their best. Do their best at whatever they can. And it's not always in the academics. It could be in the arts, right? And other things that they can excel at. And so I agree with you about the well-roundedness and looking at the whole person, and focusing on things that's going to develop a person overall.
And we've spoken about it many times. Yes, it's not just academics, but whatever you pursue, do it to the best of your ability and be the best.
You got to just do your best.
And we've always spoken about if you're a master carpenter, if you're a master plumber, if you're a master mason, you will always do extremely well in this society. And if someone knows that you can be relied on, that you provide exceptional work, and that you're honest, and you can show the fruits of your labor because it's such a small society, word of mouth alone will allow you to do extremely well. I mean, I know plumbers where it's difficult to even get them, even as a friend, to come in and spend the time to come and help me because they're so overwhelmed with business. And maybe they weren't the best academically, but they had a goal in life. They stayed on the straight and narrow. And they're very successful because of it. And I have the greatest respect, just as much respect as I would have for someone who has a PhD in physics. I'll have just as much respect or even more for someone who can build something that I couldn't even conceive. So there's so many ways that you can be successful in life, but it's important that you want to be successful and you want to love your family. You want to provide a better future for your parents, for your grandparents, for your aunts, for your uncles, for your younger siblings. You want to create a better Bahamas. And that can only happen by being a good citizen. And that starts with that.
Yeah. You know, I don't want to downplay competition because competition is great. I mean, competition, the scripture says iron sharpeneth iron, right? And it's important to do that. That's a form of extrinsic motivation. When you see, a competitor doing their best and maybe even out-competing your outbeat, it motivates you to do better, right? That can be positive. And then there's intrinsic motivation, which is that internal drive that people should have. And I think we ought to focus on that internal motivation. You know, I heard a story about Steve Jobs when he was doing the Mac. And, he was so particular about the internal components of the Mac and how it looked. And his team said to him, well, nobody's going to see that, right? Because it's all covered by the outside of the computer. And he said, well, I know, I'm going to see it. And so that's that internal drive and that internal motivation that people need to have. And that's intrinsic. And I think we ought to always try to develop that. And I think self-esteem comes from that. And doing your best, no matter. Sometimes, hey, you may come second, but you did the best that you can do. And you knew that. You put all your effort in that. And there's nothing wrong with second place sometimes, right? We always want to be number one, but it's when you put your entire effort. There's always going to be somebody better than you. There's always going to be somebody worse than you. And speaking as a competitor, I'm a fierce competitor, but I've been beaten plenty times. And that's what competition is all about. I mean, it helps you with self-esteem. It grows that sense of self. And it helps you to develop overall.
I'm going to relay a personal story. And in fact, this young man actually asked me to speak about his experience on the radio. So you and I, just like every physician, everything that is told to us in the confines of our office or in the hospital, etc., we're a vault. So obviously, we never will ever utter a word of anything that ever is disclosed to us, even to our own, our spouses. But this young man wasn't technically a patient of mine, although I did see him when he was at Princess Margaret Hospital. So he had several health issues. Those health issues led to him to be quite obese. And it was a few years ago, probably like 7 years ago, I was asked to go to, at that time, the College of the Bahamas and talk on a health subject as my role as a urologist. And I remember walking to the hall to speak. There were a group of children who were actually walking from school, walking home. I guess they were cutting through the College of the Bahamas. And there was a young man who I recognized because I saw him in and out of Princess Margaret Hospital because of his health issues. And I recognized him because of his obesity. A very nice young man. And there were young girls, they would have been 14, 15 years old, hitting him with a rock. calling him names because of his being overweight. And I could see the sadness in this young man's eyes. And I stopped the children. Actually, security came. I know so many police officers. I literally called a police officer and asked him to come. And I asked the girls to stay there. And the police officer actually spoke to them and put the fear of God in them and basically said, what you're doing is assault. And you have no right to make anyone feel inferior. Everybody has the right to live in this Bahamas. Everyone has the right to go to school without fear of ridicule. And I said, you don't know what this man has gone through in terms of his health issues and everything else. And you don't even know that he's doing very well academically. So this young man came to me and told me the great news that he actually got into an Ivy League school. This is a government student, high school student, who actually got into, after getting his first degree in the U.S., went and got a full scholarship to Ivy League for a master's degree in engineering. And he told me that it really changed his life where someone actually stood up for him. He said those children, those kids in his class never picked on him again. He had a renewed self-worth because of it. He used to not go to school because he was fear the bullying and the ridicule and the name-calling and everything else. He overcame his health issues. I hardly recognize him. He was slender, he was fit. He said he goes to the gym 4 times a week. He has a beautiful girlfriend, American, he came and brought to the office as well. And he said how that event and someone sticking up for him actually changed his life for the positive. So you never know what you can do. What is the ripple effect? And what he actually mentioned is one of the girls who was one of the main bullies was one of his neighbors. And he said, you know what? Her life went the opposite way. She was always angry. She was always trying to pull other persons down to make herself feel better. I said, where is she in life? And he said, well, she still lives in the same neighborhood as my mother. She has 2 children, 2 young children for 2 different men, no job, no hope, no future. So you can overcome anything, and you never know what someone goes through. And you have no right as a child of God to put anybody down. You have no right to ridicule someone. You have no right to make anyone feel inferior. And you never know what it can do to someone and their life. And this will bring on what I was going to speak about is there was a landmark study in the mid-1990s, and this was actually published by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States. And basically, it supported that an exposure that dramatically increased the risk for 7 out of 10 leading causes of death in the United States. So high exposures negatively impacted brain development, hormonal systems, the immune systems, and even the way the DNA is read and transcribed. So the high levels of this, I'll say what it is in a minute, tripled the lifetime risk for lung cancer, for heart disease, led to a 20-year difference in life expectancy. But yet the exposure to this harmful and negative agent is not routinely screened for anywhere. There's rarely any management plans for this adverse event. And what is this adverse event? It's not cigarette smoking. It's not alcohol. It's not pesticides. It's not some carcinogens. It's not some harmful environment pollutant. No, it's childhood trauma. You never can underestimate the effect of someone's physical outlook in life and their emotional outlook in life because of childhood trauma. So childhood trauma, it can eventually pervade your skin. It can change your body physiology. Childhood trauma can take the form of sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, childhood neglect, exposure to a parent separation, exposure to growing up with a parent with a substance abuse or a mental illness. So it takes the form of many things, and it's very pervasive in the society. So exposure to severe adversity can negatively impact developing brains and bodies of children. So this landmark study was very well received. It was a scientifically published study. It was called the Adverse childhood experience study. The study was conducted by Dr. Vince Fellini of the Kaiser Institute and Dr. Bob Anda at the Center for Diseases Control and Prevention. So this is a very complex study. It involved 17,500 adults and their history of childhood exposure to adverse events, including physical, emotional, sexual abuse, physical and emotional neglect, parental separation and divorce, domestic violence. So for every yes to the questionnaire given in this ACE study, so ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experience or Exposure, there was a calculated score, and this was found to strongly correlate with the measures of adult health and outcomes. So for example, the studies found that two very striking facts. First of all, that childhood experiences are very common. As many as 77% of the persons in this study had some exposure to an adverse childhood event. So we need to try and find some means to pick up on the childhood exposure to adversity, to trauma, and we need to rectify that and try to solve these problems before it manifests. And particularly for young boys, it internalizes and it leads to so many things, such as a life of crime, a life in gangs, and a life of ill health, reliance on alcohol, and there are so many young teenage boys and girls who, as a coping mechanism, use marijuana or use alcohol to cope. We're talking about 12-year-olds, we're talking about 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds. So if you're drinking alcohol just to get by as a 14-year-old every day, what is your life going to be? What is your future going to be like? And we all see it. We live in a 21 by 7 mile island. There's nowhere to hide all this negativity.
Yeah, I think we need to start screening for those things now that now that we have an awareness of that. We ought to screen for that. So from a professional level, we ought to screen for that. I think parents ought to be mindful and be aware of this, right? And having conversations with your children, because having the iPad raise your child, or even for those who have nannies and all that raise their children. I think we have to be open and have real conversations with our children and have relationships. A lot of this can, a part of it at least can be diagnosed or uncovered by having real relationships with your children. And the relationships just not, I provide for you, and that's the extent of the relationship. It has to be more than that. And we have to sort of create, this is a word that's used in the corporate environment a lot, but it should be used more in the home. We have to create psychologically safe spaces in the home for children, because psychological safety allows for expression. Kids won't express themselves if they don't feel safe. And so childhood trauma leads to that when you don't feel safe. If you don't feel safe, you will not express yourself. And then it creates this vicious cycle. And the vicious cycle of basically internalizing all of this, and that chronic internalizing of these negative emotions eventually comes out, and it comes out in behavior. And that behavior then leads to certain, aspects in the community that's unfavorable, that the community wouldn't tolerate, and leads to crime, and shorten the lives of these people. So it's important. Again, relationship is what's going to help. You have to have a real relationship with your children, and as professionals, we ought to be mindful and aware. I mean, all of us know, and because we could see and we allow and we can see physical disability. We can see physical disability, but mental disability sometimes is not seen. It's quiet. And I mean, and when I say disability, I don't mean like, developmental delay and stuff like that. That's different. Trauma can lead to that mental and disability like that from a cognitive perspective. And so it's important that we create that space for people to actually express themselves.
I mean, non-communicable diseases are overwhelming our society. It's destroying our society. It's overwhelming our healthcare system. But just as important as diabetes and hypertension, that we have one of the highest incidents not only in the Caribbean and the world, obesity as well, such a high rate of coronary artery disease. We're a very unhealthy nation, but we have to look deep within. What is really even more destroying our nation is the toxic stress. It's the childhood trauma. It's the things that we do not speak about. And even within the medical system, we need to implement into everyday practice, screening children, teenagers, young adults in the Bahamas for adverse childhood experiences and have a multidisciplinary management plan to manage the negative effects of these traumatic experiences. We need to have a plan to not only find out these high-risk individuals, those who are suffering, but we need to have a plan to actually solve the problem before it mushrooms and gets out of control. And every single child should be screened in the schools, or it's in the, whether it's in the clinics, or
I'm pretty sure they do that right now. Again, I'm not in that field, but I'm pretty sure. At least I could hope. Maybe someone out there in the community can call in and let us know whether the screening is being done. But I'm pretty sure. It seems basic, right?
We would like to think so.
It seems basic, right? So,
but if we're aware how imperative this is, if we were to know, for example, if ACE score, if adverse childhood experience score of 4, for example, means that that child, either he or she, has a 2.5 times greater chance of developing chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or hepatitis, or he or she has a 4 times more likely risk of developing depression, or 12 times greater risk of being suicidal. We can stratify these persons and provide them the help that they need. There are many children who are suffering, but some are suffering more than others, and we need to, not only that, we need to stop the stress itself. We need to stop the abuse. We need to stop the toxicity of our society. We need to stop the violence. We need to stop the crime. That's a broader issue. It's a complex issue, but we are a very sick society on many levels, and we can see it just from the manifestation of violence every single day. How many dead bodies are we gonna find or hear about before we say, enough is enough?
Well, again, I always say that the Ministry of Education should probably be the biggest ministry there, or the most, given the most resources. A lot of people disagree with me. That's just my personal opinion, because I think education is the foundation for health, for wealth, for social equity in a country. Once you educate a populace and they're aware, they become socially aware. And a lot of these problems are dealt with at that level. But if you leave education lagging and you don't put the appropriate resources to it, then you get a lot of people who, those gaps are filled with other things.
Such as gangs.
Right. Everybody wants to belong. We all want to belong to something.
And we all
to feel appreciated.
And we all want love. And we all want support.
Want to love.
Yeah.
And if a gang, you belong to a gang, they appreciate what you bring or your value to them. And they show you love. They feed you. Okay? Then you could see how just by human nature alone and our desire to want kinship, you just gravitate toward that.
And it's very easy for many of us to live in our bubble and say to these 12-year-olds in a gang, but when they live in a neighborhood gangs are pervasive, and the gangs threaten them that every time they go to school, you pass the gang, you got to empty your pockets. They threaten their grandmother. You say, you know what, if you don't join the gang, we're going to rob your grandmother's house.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of resilience
to overcome
times, that, right?
Just as we see in the movies, a lot of persons will join a gang in prison just to survive. And a lot of that is just people, young men trying to survive in this society.
Because it provides them safety, right?
It does.
So it goes back to the whole thing about...
And negative peer pressure causes that as well.
Psychological safety, all of that. It's a complex problem. It's not simple. But I believe that there are some elements that we can, work toward. And education is one of them, because education brings about awareness. And when you become aware, it's only then that you can make the appropriate choices that can bring about change. Because it's a choice that you make. And where you are today is just a cumulative, it's a combination of the choices that you've made in the past, right? You made some choices. And that's why we are here today. We've made some choices. We dedicated ourselves to learning, to excellence, to scholarly. And we also had opportunity. All of us, we had opportunity. Whether that opportunity was given by your parents because they were well off, or it was given by the government because a scholarship was provided, or you created opportunity itself. Opportunity has to be there.
But in this society where there's a will, there's a way. If you can dedicate yourself to your studies, you can put in the effort, you achieve some academic success, there's roads are numerous. I mean, when we talk about University of Bahamas, if you achieve a certain success, you don't have to pay anything. And that can be a stepping stone to go anywhere.
I want us to address that there too, right? Because, there are a lot of, I don't know the number. I wish I could bring up the statistic, but I can't, right? But the thing is, that's tertiary level education that's free. That is paid for if you reach a certain threshold. And a lot of us like to try to, let's say, go to the U.S. to school and stuff like that, not being aware, sometimes at a lot of expense, not realizing that we have a school, a tertiary level education system that can give you the foundation that can get you there. And it's without any significant cost to your family who is already struggling. Sometimes you have to make practical choices, right? And so, but we don't always do that. University of Bahamas is an excellent school.
And then,
that can do that.
Going $50,000 a year in debt, just say you're going to a university,
especially for business, science, right? And then you can get that first degree. Right?
Get your first degree and use that as a stepping stone to go anywhere in the world, to any institution, and get your higher learning, whether it's a master's degree or an MBA or a PhD
I'm class
or
of,
anyone else.
and I'm proud to say I'm class of, I think, 93. COB. Well, it was COB then, right? And I mean, if I say I can report on my own story. I remember when I was in Government High and we had all of these school fairs and, all those American schools would come down. I knew that my bread wasn't buttered that way for me to say I can go there. Yeah, I had the grades, but I mean, if I didn't get a full scholarship, I would not be able to afford that. But I could go to COB. And I made that choice to go to COB. And it worked well. You go, that's the opportunity that you have. And if you apply yourself, make the best of that opportunity, you will see the results and the outcome is going to be, favorable. You could try to go and let's say circumvent that route. Try to go to a tertiary education, a tertiary school in the U.S., and then put your family through significant stress, financial stress, and then what's going to happen? You end up maybe dropping out and coming back, and then there's the shame of coming back, and it starts a whole lot of a vicious circle you can't really get out of.
Or you start your career with $200,000 in debt.
Yeah.
For absolutely no reason.
No.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So we're going to talk more about this interesting topic on that at the break.
Well,
this is Urologist
call
Speaks.
in and let's talk about and discuss this.
Hey kids, it's back! The Jeff Rogers Summer Basketball Camp, July 28th to August 8th at the Kendall Isaacs Gym. Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. for boys and girls 5 to 18. Hear and learn from the NBA superstars past and present, including our very own Buddy Hield of the Golden State Warriors, Klay Thompson of the Dallas Mavericks, former Laker great Michael Sweet Bells Thompson, another great among the point guards back in the day, Muggsy Bogues, and many others. Application forms now at the Bahamas Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, Tonic Williams Darling Highway. Call 341-4021 or check the website jeffrogersbasketballcamp.com.
Nassau Cruise Port, Kalik, and Ricardo Rum presents the Made in the Bahamas Festival. Join us on Saturday, July the 19th from 3 p.m. to 12 a.m. for a cultural affair hosted by Kenny and the Mighty Pencil. Get ready for live performances by Avi, Fan Sean, Ancient Man, and more. Plus music by the best DJs. Enjoy entertainment by the Royal Bahamas Police Force Band, a Junkanoo Rush Out, giveaways, and tasty Bahamian food. Admission is only $10, so don't miss out. Drink responsibly and celebrate proudly.
Girl, Junior just showed me Bella Boy on his phone.
What you mean? He take picture of that good-for-nothing boy?
Shh, you don't want Bella here. You say that. You know she always say that's my good child.
So what he doing in Junior phone?
Oh, he there because the police looking for him. He on their wanted list.
Wanted persons in your phone now?
Yes, child. And when police want to find anybody quick, after something happen, they can send picture direct to your phone. Go to Google Play or App Store and search for Crack Crime Bahamas. Then pick install and it will go straight to your phone.
There is also a section on missing persons.
Yes, girl. Everybody needs to get this app so police can tell us right away when these people go missing. Just like an alert system.
Yes, it has numbers for Crime Stoppers Bahamas, so you can call and nobody knows it's you. Call directly to Miami and give the information without giving your name or anything about you. I tried the other day, and when I hear Junior and his boys talking about where they hide those guns, I walk quick round the corner and call that number.
Call 328-8477 from Nassau or 242-300-8477 from the Family Islands.
Love the show? Want to give your support? Become a sponsor today. Call 302-288-10 packages. That's 302-2300. Become a sponsor on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Welcome back. This is Urologist Speaks with Bahamian urologist Dr. Greggory Pinto and Bahamian surgical oncologist and general surgeon Dr. Wesley Francis. We're talking about the shocking survey that showed that for Bahamians 13 to 18 in that survey, 1 in 5, 20% approximately, had contemplated and attempted suicide. So we're talking about hopelessness in our society. We're talking about despair in children. Talking about a study published by the CDC in the United States in regards to the effect of childhood adverse experiences and adult health and wellness and life expectancy. We have a call coming in. Good evening. This is Urologist Speaks.
Good evening, Dr. Pinto, and good evening, Dr. Francis.
Good evening.
As a retired teacher, I just want to make a comment here, right, of some of the students I have taught over the years. And I see students coming to class late. And I said to them, why is it that you're coming to class late? They said, you know what, I got to go take my brother or sister to school. Some of these children, when they wake up in the morning, there is no adult supervision. They have to find their own breakfast. They have to take care of the little ones. And you could see the pain in their faces, and in their you could see the despair in their eyes when you speak with them.
So a lot of children are not allowed to be children. They have to grow up very fast. They have to be the father of the house. I see it all the time, and it's a crying shame. Even the economic burden for a lot of the older children falls on them, where they have to work every minute after school. When are they going to have a chance to study? When are they going to have a chance to do homework? How are they going to ever participate in a club where the financial burden falls on them? In many cases, their mother is not working. The single mother is not working. The only one providing any economic for the family would be this 14-year-old, this 15-year-old who has to go pack in the grocery store or has to do this or work in McDonald's or do everything else. And their future is taken from them. Obviously, there are those who against all odds, it can still succeed, but please don't put that burden on your child. Let them have a chance. If you had a hard life, don't let it go on to the next generation.
You know, we need to find solutions to such problems, right? Some children say, I only come to school when on my day off, you know?
Yes.
Because they have to chip in to pay the bills in the house.
Well, as a long-term teacher, we've spoken about it many times, Dr. Francis and myself, and even Dr. Curling when he was on as a guest host. What have you seen in terms of, over the many years, the decades that you've been a teacher, in terms of the difference between young men, boys and girls, and young women in terms of how they view academics, how they're focused, the success that they attend? Obviously, we throughout the years, even within the medical school, 10% are males. Maybe 10 years ago it was 30%, and it's just getting worse and worse. What do you see as the problem in terms of why are so many young men not putting any emphasis or importance into academics? Is it a cultural thing?
One reason is because they are distracted by real life issues, right? Yeah. They have to help out at home. And there is a lack of adult supervision.
But do you think within the school itself, do you think that a young man who's successful academically, do you think that their peers are going to embrace him, or they're going to be ridiculed versus the success for a young woman?
There is ridicule in some cases, right? But I would say that largely there is a camaraderie and understanding, right? But not for everyone. When you're in a classroom and you see a child sleeping, the other children laugh at him, right? You know, he didn't get a chance to. He woke up late and he was trying to get some homework done. You know.
And I mean, there are broader issues in that. How can a teacher teach a class with 45 students with different varying skills and attention spans and everything else and varying backgrounds? Maybe 3 of them have attention deficit disorder. 2 of them are class clowns. 12 of them don't even speak English. That's another issue in itself.
Yeah.
How can we, as a system, provide a good education, a fundamental basis, when so many children are graduating just based on them achieving a certain age? Because we can't hold everybody back. How many 8th graders are reading at a 3rd grade level? How many 7th graders have math skill and knowledge of a 4th grader?
So you know, as I listened to the gentleman who's teaching, you could hear the concern in his voice. You're battling the home environment, right? So it can't only be done in the classroom, obviously, and something has to be done at home. I know in the past we used to have at least nurses that went out, social nurses that went out and checked out the home and see what sort of social situation that most of the kids are in. I don't know if that's actually happening now, and what programs are put in place to try to mitigate some of that to assist. But perhaps programs need to be there. He's telling us, right? If the student is coming to school and is distracted by so much that they have to do at home, that responsibility, they will never be able to succeed. It's going to become a vicious circle.
Yeah, well, we do have what we call an attendance officer, right?
Right.
Who check on children who don't come to school regularly, right? And we do have a program where the children who can't afford lunch, right, they're taken care of.
Right.
You know, there are other programs within the school who try to help children who have serious problems.
I mean, it's great for children. It's a start for them to actually attend school on time. But how many of them are physically there, but mentally they're not there at all? They have no aspirations for anything. They don't see education as a future for them. They're full of hopelessness and despair. They don't see a brighter tomorrow. How can we give them hope. I mean, are there not enough role models? Is there not enough positivity? Do we need to have some kind of...
Greg, I mean, you could have all the role models in the world, and then everything in the school, and you can provide everything for them at school, but when they go home, you know, they go into an environment
where
that's
they're
really
sleeping
toxic.
on the floor and they don't know where the next meal is coming
it's
from. I know.
not safe.
Yeah.
And so that's where the outreach has to. And I mean, from a practical point of view, I mean, you could do everything in the school, but it's a twofold problem. It's school and then it's home. And so parents have to be involved. And this is where the community also has to be involved. And if the community is not involved, then, you know, whereas you can intervene at school, if you're not intervening at home, then that's a problem.
There are teachers who help students that they have identified who are having some serious issues, right? And who try to prevent name calling and who try to prevent other students from teasing and putting other students down, right? The teachers, they really work hard.
They do.
In many cases, right? To mitigate against such factors of teasing and students who bring into light to the guidance department students who have serious issues and who need help.
Well, you know what? Just want to thank you for the service that you provide to our children in school and all the teachers out there, because we know you do a significant job to shape the next generation.
Yeah, teachers, guidance counselors, principals are our unsung heroes, and almost anyone who's had any success in life has had one teacher who's been monumental in helping them achieve that success.
Yeah.
So I would ask you, caller, from your vast experience as in this educational system and as a teacher, do you think that there'd be a benefit, even if it's one school where it's basically an all-male school, an all-female school? Do you think that we can even find young men who are at risk and have a special school where it's catered to small classes, where there are male teachers who are positive role models, there's strong discipline within that school, where there's outreach for persons because they know of the multiple problems that these persons have? Don't you think that we can have maybe an at-risk school for young men, or even a government school for science only, where those best teachers in the country allow these students who are interested in science, for example, to succeed, not diluting the one good chemistry teacher here, one good biology teacher here. Let's put all the best that the government has in one school, identify all those students who had the aptitude, and then bring them in and we have that one successful model, and then we can replicate that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in some ways, that is being done right now, right? There are schools for at-risk students, right, for girls, a special school for girls, and there's a special school for boys, right? And within the school itself, they have a way of placing students in classes according to abilities, right? There are many theories on that. Sometimes they say, let them have a class with mixed abilities is better than having a class with all of them being at the same level. With mixed abilities, then the weak will help, the strong will help the weak,
right?
The weaker kids.
Well, and another way of looking at it, you're sacrificing some of the stronger students because you have to basically have them. You can't teach at the same level.
No, diversity is important, you know, and diversity actually helps people. There's because that would then stimulate a lot of the weaker students, and also, and I don't think it takes away from the stronger ones. You know, I think that's a great initiative to be diverse. Diversity is very important, and then a lot of problems are solved because of diverse people, diverse backgrounds. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of the private school success. I mean, there are many reasons for it. Smaller classes,
They have a lot of
better
support,
resources.
right? Yeah, resources.
Overall, unfortunately, to say it, better parental support, etc. But a lot of it is also the streamlining. You basically streamlined in terms of your abilities, so that you have the best persons at math in one class, the second tier in another class, and they all go at their different level. The same for French, the same for
Dr. Pinto, that is being done in many schools right now, where the children who have higher abilities are together, and then we have a first stream, a second stream, the third stream, and then they're the children who really need help, right? They have learning disabilities. That is being done right now in many of the schools.
So as a veteran retired teacher, and you had a magic wand to change, let's say, 5 different things to make our educational system better, what would you start with, and what do you think is the first thing to do?
I would start in the home, right? I would start in the home where children have adult supervision, where the parents see them off to school in the morning, or at least one adult see them off to school in the morning, where the responsibility for younger siblings doesn't fall primarily on the bigger child, on the older child rather. I would like to see more intervention in terms of children being supervised within the school itself, in terms of they're not the ones who are really smart, right? You need to help the ones who are not smart to have a fighting chance, you know.
And then obviously their parents that, because of circumstances, they're not even able to help their children with homework. So we need to provide that support even after school, in terms of after-school programs for support, particularly for those who want to succeed, but you know what, within their home they don't have anyone who can actually help them. But it's a complex issue. I mean, even culturally, if you go home and your grandmother and your mother, as a young 15-year-old, you're being told that, you know, you don't have to worry about academics. All you got to do is have a nice figure. You need to wear the right dress. You need to come on to the right man, and this man's going to pay your mortgage. This man's going to pay your BPL bill. You have too many, and I'll say it, and it's going to be shocking, but it's a fact how many mothers are pimping out their own daughters so that they can get money coming into the house. And it's pervasive in this society, and it's I don't know how we're going to stop this from happening, but abusers become abusers. And if this is all you know in terms of women using men for money, or you have no problem with your 16-year-old going out with a 70-year-old man because he's putting $500 in your purse every month, you're definitely pimping out your child, and you're sacrificing their future. And what is that teaching your daughter? She'll never have a future. And there's too much of that. There are too many young women who are getting pregnant purposefully because they want someone to love, and they think that they have a child, they're going to have someone to love them back, and they don't know the hell of having a child when they have no support from the male, when they have little support from their own parents, and they have no job or no education, with very little future. And then the next thing they're going to do is try to get pregnant for somebody else because they think that brings economics in, and it's a vicious cycle. So by the time they're 30 years old, they might have 4 kids for 4 different men, and their life is over before it even starts. And then that cycle starts for their children. So we have a very unhealthy society on so many levels.
Dr. Pinto, your view is really interesting, right? Because you have described exactly what happens among some families, right? I mean, I'd be watching it on TV all the time, right? What's going on, right? We learn about kids being missing, who kids are running away from home, right? So that's another issue as well.
And there have to be consequences for actions. I mean, if you're having what we call you're having sexual relations with an underage child, you need to have more than a possible 7-year prison sentence that you're facing. I mean, this is ridiculous. We're not putting value on our women. We all have mothers. We all have sisters. We all have grandmothers. We all have daughters. Why, as a judicial system, are you allowed to come into somebody's house, hold a gun to their head, rape them, then when you're caught, put the victim through the ordeal and horror again of reliving that in the trial, and at most you're going to get, because of what's on the books, is 7 years. And then after that 7 years, no one actually serves the 7 years. Maybe you'll serve 4.5 or 5 with good behavior. And then they're out on the street. And then the same person who came in your house on the small 21 by 7 mile island, you're going to run into at the food store. You're going to run into at the movie theater. That's no way to live. And we need to put more value on lives. And we do not. You can go and get drunk and mow down 2 people, and it's manslaughter. And what are you going to get? 2 years, suspended sentence, a $20,000 fine? We do not put enough value on life in this society. And that's a deeper issue.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Anyway, I believe that the Ministry of Education is doing a fantastic job. I mean, not perfectly in trying to get programs to assist students with their needs. That's right. It's not all gloom in the schools. Right. We must look on the positive side too.
Did you find
help is being offered?
Did you find as a teacher that things were getting better, or things were getting worse as time went on?
Well, what I discovered, was that things were improving, but slowly, programs were being implemented to assist, social programs, for example, there are clubs in the schools, I did hear Dr. Francis mention clubs, They try to get to and organize into clubs. And like I said earlier, the children who need help, they're being referred to social services.
And do you think that there are enough male teachers? Do you think that there are enough male guidance counselors in our system?
There are too few male teachers, in our system.
There are too few males in any situation, that's what happened. And I
guess
think,
it's
go ahead.
We need more male teachers, and UB is turning out lots of teachers. I'm not sure how many teachers graduated this last graduation period, But they are working on getting more teachers into the system.
Well, how do you think we can motivate persons? Obviously, they need to have better compensation. They need to have a better income. Maybe we can give incentives in terms of low interest mortgages, in terms of maybe giving the teachers who have provided 15 years of service, exemplary service, crown land. But there has to be some motivation for someone who academically could probably go into any career, for them to put up and it is a sacrifice to be a teacher. It's a very difficult ordeal. It can be a very frustrating ordeal. Why would someone put themselves through that and they're going to live month to month? Would you agree most teachers are living month to month?
In fact, it's not only teachers living month to month, Quite a significant number of people is living month to month, But I have heard of what is called a retention bonus. Some teachers were given a retention bonus, so encourage them to remain in the profession rather than leave it.
Yeah.
I really can't speak to the financial things. The government obviously knows what they need to do to make it more attractive for teachers. But you have spoken some common sense things, If a male cannot earn enough money to support his family as a teacher, well, then he will find something else to do, or he will have 2 jobs,
And I mean, you can look at the statistics. Nassau is the 9th most expensive city in the world to live. So that is a stressor in itself.
Yeah, our cost of living is through the roof.
It's
right?
overwhelming. How many middle class families? We'll even talk about nuclear families, where 80% of our society are single mothers. What even a nuclear family where you have a mother, you have a father, you have 2 children with a dual income. How many of them can afford to have a middle class home?
I'm encouraged by the things I hear from the caller about the programs that are still in place. And these programs, sometimes you don't see the outcome for years, you see it 5, maybe 10 years down the road because you're trying to shift generational cultural norms, right? That so the outcome is usually delayed, but you have to continue to persist with those programs so that eventually you see the benefit. And I'm happy to hear that those things are still going on in the schools. Like junior achievement, we had junior achievement, we had Key Club, then you had the specific STEM clubs, math club, science club, all of those things, and those are they're the profitable or the beneficial distractions for kids so that they're not elsewhere doing things, right? So I'm happy to hear that.
And then we have to talk about the violence of our society. Even if you want to join a club and you're a young lady and in winter months it gets dark by 5:30, it's not safe for you to walk home into your neighborhood, and that's the reality. So we need to have a safe environment. We need to have a safe space for our children.
We have to be intentional about trying to motivate more boys. We were intentional about getting women to be equal in pay and equal in other things to men because we saw a disparity. I think we've got.
Dr. Pinto
thank you
and
so
Dr.
much.
Francis,
Right.
I thank you very much for speaking with me on the show.
Well, thank you for joining us.
You made some wonderful points, and I thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Yeah.
So, as this comes to a close, I just want to say that we never underestimate the consequences of childhood adversity. First thing we need to do, as we always say in this show, we need to treat the root cause. We need to address the root cause. So we need to try and prevent childhood adversity and toxic stresses for children as much as possible. And if we can try and find out who is going through, stratify and determine who's at highest risk for developing, going through all these stresses, we can prevent them from having a life of diabetes, hypertension, coronary heart disease, obesity, live longer, live better. I'm going to, as we close today's show, I'm going to quote the former president of the American Academy of Pediatrics, Dr. Robert Bloch, who stated that the adverse childhood experiences are the single greatest unaddressed public health threat facing our nation today. So the children are our future. We're losing a generation of children. We need to act, and we need to act fast. Any other words, Dr. Francis?
No, I concur. That's it.
Have a good evening, and thank you very much. We'll have another interesting talk on Urologist Speaks next week. Good night.
All right.
Early prevention, but letting your pencil make you